Let's not forget as well how important whistleblowers are in exposing the truth, especially around what we've seen with the state capture inquiry. South Africa, with whistleblowers, they're often killed, they're forced into hiding, they're compelled to leave the country along with their families as well. That was certainly the case for state capture whistleblower Athol Williams. We heard from Williams earlier in the show. Let's bring in very well-known journalist and author Mandy Wiener into this as well. Also well-known, of course, for Killing Kebble, that book, but her book particularly. Mandy, good morning to you. That we're talking about is your book, The Whistleblowers. Allow me to put this as a way of starting our conversation. Whistleblowers were the spark that started the fire. They were the wind that fanned the flames, but their honesty resulted in them being burnt by what they've done. Would that be a fair assessment of a whistleblower in state capture?
Very much so, Gareth. Good morning. Yeah, that's very much the case of what we've seen happening to whistleblowers. And if you look at the State Capture Commission, what we've seen from Zondo now and the report is an acknowledgement, a vindication, if you like, of the contribution made by whistleblowers. We've seen Themba Maseko being applauded and being vindicated for the role that he played in pushing back against the Guptas in terms of the New Age advertising. You've mentioned Athol Williams. We've seen a vindication there of what he said around Bain and co. And unfortunately, the experience of whistleblowers in South Africa is that when they speak out against corruption, they are very much pushed to the fringes of society. They are left broken. Many of them are unemployed. They're treated as pariahs. And that's why there's been so much anticipation around what Zondo and the State Capture Commission is going to say and now has said in its report around the protection of whistleblowers.
And your book also talks about a possible change in legislation as well to try and protect whistleblowers going forward. Where are we in that? Are you seeing any winds of change?
So I've been advocating for a change in legislation because our legislation currently, in terms of the Protected Disclosures Act, is just insufficient. It just doesn't go far enough. And it's really important because the State Capture Commission, in its report now, has suggested that we see new legislation, that we see an amendment to the legislation around whistleblowers. And the key suggestion that is being made is around the remuneration of whistleblowers. So that is the key suggestion that has come out here, that we should see whistleblowers getting a percentage of the money that is recovered to the fiscus. And this is something that we see happening in the US with the False Claims Act, with the agencies there. So as an example of that, Gareth, so last year, a whistleblower in the US received a $200 million payout for a successful whistleblowing claim. So money was recovered to the fiscus in the US, and a percentage between 10 and 30% goes to the whistleblower in the US. So if we look at that happening in South Africa, just one example, Mosilo Motepo, who blew the whistle on Trillion, 695 million rand was recovered to the South African fiscus as a result. She should then get 69.5 million rand, and she got nothing.
She got nothing as well. One of those people who have now come out and said that she has handed over the baton essentially to the state capture inquiry, to the NPA, to the president. Please leave me alone. Don't contact me for interviews. I'm sure you're aware of that as well. Done my job, country duty. Please leave me alone, which is the kind of fatigue, isn't it, Mandy, that these whistleblowers go through. They feel like they've done what they need to. Now, please leave me alone. Is that perhaps the right way for a whistleblower to approach this? I've done what I have to. Please go away and leave me alone.
But bear in mind, of course, also she has made herself available to testify in a potential criminal case, so she will be assisting the NPA. But what you see with many whistleblowers is the emotional and the psychological burden that many of them carry. And that's why the sense that I'm getting from whistleblowers is that the Zondo Commission has definitely done the right thing here. They've made good suggestions, but they need to go further. We need to see more short-term protection for whistleblowers in terms of psychological support, legal support, physical security. So it's very good in terms of long-term to get remuneration, but there's a lot more support that you need as well, because many of these whistleblowers have enormous emotional burdens. Many of them develop all sorts of vices, which you know, of course, affects their lives and their employment. Their marriages break down. It's a huge burden on their families. And these are patriots. These are people that very much have done country duty, who have stood up against state capture. And many of them, as a result, have lost their jobs. They have had emotional breakdowns. They have been pushed to the fringes of society, as I say, and they should be treated as heroes.
One could even argue that there could be a sense of PTSD as well as the years go on, that you could look back at the kind of treatment they've received. Mandy, a last brief question and answer to you, if you don't mind, which would be reminiscent of me not to bring in the contentious issue which your book does talk about, whistleblowers coming out in order to absolve themselves and get away from the crimes that they're reporting on so as not to be complicit. You address that as well.
Yes, and there is a lot of controversy around this because many of the whistleblowers that come forward have got a proximity to wrongdoing. So many of them have been involved in wrongdoing themselves. But there is a broad definition. There is a spectrum of whistleblowers as I see it. So there are whistleblowers who definitely come forward out of altruistic motives, who believe that it's black or white, that there can be no transgression. But then there are whistleblowers who have got proximity, who have been involved in wrongdoing, but feel that they need to speak up. And I believe that they remain whistleblowers. And the Zondo Commission does also speak about protection for these whistleblowers who are going to testify, who then get some kind of indemnity from prosecution. So it is a very controversial terrain. I do address it. Some people believe that they are not whistleblowers, but I believe that you do, and we've seen this with prosecutions. You mentioned killing Kebble. I mean, that's a great example of the Kebble case and the Jackie Sleeby case, where we have seen people who were involved who've had to testify. So I think that definition is broad, but they remain whistleblowers.